Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties, episode 17. Yes, episode 17 of season 5. My name is Lee. I am in Western Australia. And joining me is my faithful and wonderfully intelligent Vikas co-host in Canberra.
Hey, I was just like,
That
I
was a
think you
word
can be
salad.
forgiven.
It's
You
supposed to come
forgot.
out differently, and it didn't.
I
One of
suppose
those
it can be
nights.
forgiven, considering we're both. Well, I'm getting prepared for the Friedman conference.
Yep.
If you are going to be in the Friedman conference tomorrow, I think it starts tomorrow, but I'll
Yep.
be there on Saturday. Feel free to pop by and say hello. I'll be the guy in the kilt.
Always. Do you ever not go to Friedman with a kilt?
In a kilt, I always go to Friedman.
Yep.
This is the first time I'm going in a kilt. No,
I,
it's the second
I,
time I'm going. I
yeah,
was
because
in a kilt
I've seen
last year.
photos of you in a kilt at Friedman. I'm pretty sure it was
Yeah,
last year at the
it
dinner.
was last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except
Anyway,
I'm thinking about making it a full Friedman experience. Yeah.
you're gonna get the blue face
And for
paint out
anyone who
and a
hasn't done,
claymore.
well, I didn't play more, but I will be trolling their comment section
Yeah,
all Friedman. So even if you don't meet me, just read the comment section.
yeah, yeah. I gotta say, like that's like the sort of the tweeting and the Hoover kind of sub discussion of Friedman during the sessions has always been like a really enjoyable part of Friedman. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, even
To,
if
to be perfect to be perfectly honest, like people come up to me afterwards. Like all last year, people were coming up to me after the events and going like, "Dude, seriously, I couldn't actually listen to it because you kept trolling the freaking discussion."
yeah,
And
yeah,
I even had like the organizers going like, "Can you like sort of wind back a bit?" So that's my highlight
yeah.
of Freedom. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I've
which
so I'm not this. Didn't go this year. I went last year, and then I went the very first time. And I have to
yeah
say, it's a Friedman's a really great experience. If you're a listener of this show and you haven't been, I presume most people who listen to the show or watch the show have been. But if you haven't, really next year try to go. Or if you're in Sydney, I mean, I think tickets are still available. It's just
yeah.
a really enjoyable experience. Anyway, um, this week we're going to talk about two things. So Jordan Peterson has been the hot topic in the Australian
In
Libertarian
all
Forum.
libertarian circles, in all
Yeah,
libertarian circles,
yeah.
yeah.
He's
Whether it's the
certainly
US, whether
yeah, and I mean just in general, like he's having a bit of a cultural moment. So
yeah.
yeah, so he's the hot topic, and we're going to talk about One Nation and sort of tax cuts, and they've basically announced that they're not going to support the corporate tax cuts that the federal government wants to get through, and we're going to sort of talk about that. So let's talk about Jordan Peterson first. So for
Yeah.
those of 4 people on the planet who don't know who he is, he's he's at the University of Toronto. He's a Canadian professor, psychology professor, clinical psychologist, and he's become a kind of a public intellectual. He's got
Well, he wouldn't use that to describe himself.
I mean, public
he's just like
intellectual
I'm
is
sort
usually
of
like a backhanded compliment, but I think he legitimately is
yeah.
like in the true term, which is to say that he is someone out in the wider culture talking about ideas. So
Well,
he's not a policy wonk. He's not a
no,
in some ways he sort of verges on guru, which is
yeah.
part of his work and also
Well,
part of his cultural cachet. But yeah,
well, most of his stuff has got to do with self-improvement, and to be fair, his background is clinical psychology, right? So
yeah,
this is what he kind of does for a living,
yep,
right? He basically tells people how to he sorts out people's lives.
yep,
Um, Now, I actually bought and read 12 Simple Rules,
okay,
and I got to admit, I'm probably going to get, even though I am a Jordan Peterson fan
yep,
because of his work on Bill C16 and a whole bunch of other things, I did not actually like the book very much.
okay,
I found it rambly, and to be perfectly honest, there was no like. There are people who are going like, I had like this massive insightfulness and like dingo out of reading his book, and I just went there going like, nothing he said is anything that I haven't heard before, and
yep,
most of it's just about being a more organized individual, and sort of better evaluating your decisions and the way you make decisions.
yep,
And quite frankly, for some people that might seem really profound, but for me, I'm just like, I don't see what this is just basic self-help.
Yeah.
So I'm probably starting off on a foot. So I'm probably starting off with some people who are going to go like, "Oh, wait, did you read this part of the book and did you not find that insightful?" And it's just like, guys, you got to realize insight's like subjective to begin with. And yes, I've read it. I just did not find it as insightful as you.
Yeah. So I'll be totally honest. I've read more about Jordan Peterson, and I mean, I've heard him on Econ Talk and sort of seen some of his interviews, shorter interviews. But I mean, the kind of the core body of his work is, firstly his book from like 99, I think it was, which is Maps of Meaning, which is like 500 pages. And I've heard it's just almost impenetrable sometimes with its just verbosity and just really really dense.
Having read 12 Simple Rules, he's in bad need of a really good editor.
Yeah.
He's a great speaker, and I think he conveys his ideas really well. Just as an author, some people have their strengths, and writing is not one of Jordan Peterson.
Well, I mean, I guess a lot of people who have watched a lot of his lectures, so that's kind of where he's really come to prominence, is his multiple part 2-hour lectures on the Bible and all sorts of different things. Mythology and the self-help stuff. Yeah, so I think that's kind of where a lot of people are coming into it. And I mean, to be honest, I don't really have time to sit down for 2 hours and listen to Jordan Peterson, so that's kind of one of the reasons why it's put me off like getting into it, because I've got other things on in life and I don't have time for that.
Sure, but the latest sort of Jordan Peterson controversy has been effectively what you could call a New York Times hit piece.
Sure.
So I think it was something about enforced monogamy or something like that. Like there was a tweet, there was not just the tweet, but there were a whole bunch of statements that he'd made that were taken gratuitously out of context and used to imply that he was in favor of enforced monogamy. But in reality, I think so. I've actually heard his explanation on the Majid Nawaz show. And he was basically saying, look, we're talking about incels. I don't know if you're familiar with the term incels.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Involuntary celibate.
So for the benefit of those who aren't familiar with it, would you like to sort of just briefly explain it?
Yeah, so the involuntary celibates. And I think the latest shooter in Santa Fe or something in the US was described as an incel, and he was a member of the incel board and all of that other stuff. So
basically the core aspect of it is they're very angry about the fact that women have rejected them. So, I mean, yeah, so I guess their whole thing is like they essentially feel like they've, I mean, it's really heavily anti-feminist. I think it's misogynistic. They probably wouldn't call themselves misogynistic, but it's certainly resentment. It's a resentment-based kind of subculture where they resent women for rejecting them. They resent other men for, I don't know, not supporting them enough or something.
I'll agree with the resentment. It's see, there's actually another one, and we should probably link. So another YouTuber called Aidan Paladin has basically gone through, and Aidan Paladin, who's actually gone through the sociological studies on these ones. It's a form of chauvinism, and it's really chauvinism, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of choose my words carefully on this because they're not strictly misogynistic, right? Misogynistic describes what are you going to say, apathy towards women, or alternatively hatred of women, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Gillard redefinition was like either you're indifferent to women suffering or you want women to suffer. So that's not what the incels have. The incels have a version of women, and women don't fit that version. So it's not really a hatred of women. It's a resentment sort of thing. So it's more chauvinism than it is misogyny.
Okay, I mean, I guess it depends. Yeah, like how you define misogyny.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly they feel entitled to basic sex from women, and they don't feel they're getting it.
Well, that's why, and that's something Jordan Peterson was talking about. Because because what he did, he pointed this out, and I hadn't actually thought about it this way. They're actually really old. It's Marxism taken to its logical conclusion, right? From those with the ability to those with their need, and it really comes off one of the things in the incel community that's like massive is this OkCupid research, and it's been replicated since then on Tinder and a whole bunch of other places. And what they found is effectively 20% of the women, sorry, 20% of the men are having sex with about 80% of the women.
Yep, sure.
Right, and that was on OkCupid, and they found Tinder. They found similar results on Tinder. They found similar results on all dating sites. Now, they use that, and the conclusions they come up with is because women are subsidized so heavily, right? You know, that people should be entitled to sex. And there's like, you can really go deep down into this community and really just go, there are some serious fucking wrong issues with people. And for anyone who's really interested, Reddit has taken off the incel subreddit, but it's all on Web Archive, and I totally recommend you actually read some of those things. And there are literal threads where they quote Marx.
Yep.
So they are actually old school Marxists, and basically, Peterson was trying to psychoanalyze them, which is kind of his job, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally don't care. I'm sitting there going like, I understand where they're coming from. I don't agree with them.
Sure.
And I don't think it's worth my time to actually go there and analyze them.
Sure.
But hey, Jordan Peterson's job. So.
And just as a side note, a part of that, I mean, I guess kind of the kinds of people that have sort of really got on board for Jordan Peterson are kind of in that sort of right-wing subcultures on the internet. So it's kind of, I mean, he's associated with the alt-right. He doesn't identify himself as that. I think he calls himself a progressive liberal. But certainly, and so maybe like the very hardcore, like the kind of far alt-right, you know, the actual kind of racist, truly white nationalist side, maybe you don't go. But certainly his place within kind of...
No, none of the alt-right likes him. They've constantly called him out to debate. So the alt-right have a white identitarian thing.
Yep.
And one of the things Jordan Peterson is antithetical to, or rather his positions are antithetical, is identitarian. He hates all identity. So he's associated with the alt-right is something that the NYT and numerous news organizations have run with. It was started by Kathy Newman, and he's said numerous times, why do you keep trying to associate me with them when they clearly don't have any views that sit with me?
Again, it depends how you define alt-right, because if you define it very narrowly as kind of as the white nationalist end of things, which is, I mean, I personally view it as broader than that. It's essentially as an alternative, like non-mainstream conservative movement. So that's personally how I see it. So when I say alt-right, I don't mean like, what's his name, Richard Spencer. I mean like
but
like broadly speaking, the alternative right, non-mainstream conservative movement that we see kind of through the internet, which includes Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin, the intellectual dark web, which apparently is now the new thing.
You include Dave Rubin in the alt-right?
As broadly part of a non-mainstream conservative movement.
Okay, sure, but as long as you're not calling him alt-right, because then I'd be just like
not narrowly in, like, as I said, not Richard Spencer. So I'm saying like much broader than. So basically, we're not talking about the Heritage Foundation. So like, if you talk about mainstream conservatives in the US, you're talking about Heritage.
Yep.
You're talking about like the CEI.
Cato.
I wouldn't define it as Cato because I think libertarians are different from conservatives. But and the National Review and Fox News and all that kind of, and what's his name? The Talkback guys. Rush
Limbaugh.
Yeah, guys like that. That's what I would call mainstream conservatism. Basically, alt-right guys. What I would personally, when I talk about the alt-right, I mean like just literally all these young guys who are conservative, but not mainstream conservative. They're coming at from literally from alternative perspective.
Sure, but even Dave Rubin's not a conservative at all. He used to be on the Young Turks. He's a classical liberal.
Sure, but his fan base is in that movement. So like
his fan base is not the alt-right.
As I said, like, okay, how about instead of using something, we'll talk about non-mainstream conservatism. We'll use that phrase instead of alt-right.
Sure.
Yeah. So Peterson's fan base, Rubin's fan base, Joe Rogan. So this term, the intellectual dark web, has sort of sprung up to also include those people. Brett Weinstein, Brett and Rither.
So effectively, everyone who doesn't buy, everyone who sits and talks about things that isn't like what the effectively mainstream media says that opinion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because that's effectively who you've described.
Yeah.
No,
So basically, the non-mainstream conservative.
I'm happy to agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to agree with that. But the thing is, so a number of things that get thrown around by people like the New York Times, Channel 4, BBC, is that he's associated with the alt-right, which is not true. You've got Richard Spencer, who said like he's wrong about Islam. He's wrong about, what was the exact quote? He's wrong about Islam. He's wrong about white culture, and he's wrong about immigration. And he said he wants to debate him on all three of those things.
Sure.
You've also got people like Tommy Lauren who say that he's wrong about immigration.
Yeah.
So I mean, like the identitarian movement side, do not like Jordan Peterson at all.
Yeah.
The other thing that has frequently been thrown about Jordan Peterson is that he's an MRA, men's rights activist.
Yep.
They don't particularly like him either.
Oh, okay.
Right, and So for anyone who's not, Elam, whatever his name is, the guy who runs, God, I can't remember his name, but he was on the Red Pill. That guy basically said Jordan Peterson is wrong based on, because Jordan Peterson's main thing is men should improve themselves.
Yep.
Right? And Elam,
I find that interesting also just because Peterson seems to, I mean, as far as I can tell, he's very much about that kind of traditional...
has a large male audience.
Yeah.
No, it's not traditional. So his audience is primarily the people the people that I encountered who are mainly Jordan Peterson fans are the people who would have been doing the Draw Muhammad days 9 years ago.
Sure, yeah, but
right?
no, what I'm saying is like...
They were organizing Draw Muhammad days. They're basically internet left-leaning people, right?
Okay.
They would have been the people who raised the shit about Gamergate, right? It's all the same group of people.
No, I'm just saying about the men's rights thing because, like, as best I can tell, Peterson has a traditional view of relationships. That is, men and women are different.
He does.
Men should be men, women should be women. I mean, I don't think he's
going so far as saying
women should be in the kitchen. Well, that's why I'm saying, like, it's... I'm surprised the MRA, because I thought MRA would be pretty...
No, so MRAs are effectively just the other side of the coin to feminism, right? They just believe in effectively redistributed power from the state to help men out.
Okay.
Right. And in their situation, it's things like unfairness in custody and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So theoretically, the feminists and MRAs should converge, but for some reason they're not. They believe very similar things. They're just on the other side of the spectrum about which gender has it worse.
Yep. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Again, I'm surprised that they're not on board for Peterson, because Peterson definitely, from what I can tell, seems to be pretty much saying that, men are being sort of mistreated in the culture, that essentially men have been emasculated. That seems to be my understanding of his critique of kind of just Western culture broadly, and particularly left wing.
His solution to that isn't the government, right? He's he's very much on board with the libertarian idea on this one. He's just like, look, we fucked it up, right? We fucked it up with state intervention. Right. So we need to roll back some of that state intervention, right? And he basically said, like, his running theory, and he basically goes and explains this in terms of hierarchy, is that we spent a lot of time building the hierarchies that we have, right? And they're more or less stable, right? And they're stable because we've arrived at certain conclusions based on trial and error, right? So, for example, the situation where women are, basically funded by the state, right, leads to a form of loneliness for women, right?
Yep.
So if you take a look at it in women, and I'm sort of getting into an entire chapter of it here,
Yep.
Women are facing higher amounts of loneliness because they're single mothers, right?
Yep.
There's less satisfaction in them. And the result of that is kids who are, growing up, without appropriate role models.
Yep.
Right? And one of the points he continuously makes is the biggest indicator for a successful child, right, is a stable family unit. Right? And there's not any basically said. And what we've done through the welfare schemes, through various welfare schemes and through courts, is basically incentivize a structure where kids don't get that.
Sure.
Now, that doesn't actually tie in with the MRA angle, which is like men need better access. Men need more services.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. I'm just really into this side of the culture because this is internet people.
Yeah. Sure.
Always on the internet. Yeah. But the thing is, I always find the way people talk about these different areas of the internet, and I just go, that's not actually what they believe, right? And I'm happy to like go point to people's like actual articles.
Sure.
And just go, hey, look, this is what they believe, and it's just like people go, well, no, they're just lying.
Yep.
So
yeah. I mean, I think that is a really important thing. So I mean, I don't know if I'd say I'm skeptical of Jordan Peterson. I'm just kind of apathetic. Like I'm not really that interested, but I'm not like that anti. Certainly,
so technically, that's because you and I are in the same sort of boat here. We're self-actualized males. He doesn't actually have anything to.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, certainly I could definitely clean up my room more often, but like it's not like that's a revelatory thing for me. Like I mean, I saw a tweet the other day. Which
you can
was
see
parodying
right behind me.
Yeah.
My room is not currently clean.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I could probably
I mean, to be fair,
my
my wife doesn't keep her side of the bedroom clean either, so I guess in that regard, it's a bit different. But yeah, I mean, the kind of the personality cult side of things, which is interesting because on Econ Talk, he was directly asked about this by Russ Roberts, and he's very uncomfortable with it. Which I think that's a good thing. Like if you've got this fan base that's really quite rabid. I mean, I've seen a kind of a cartoon where somebody was sort of set up between this sort of Jordan Peterson fan and this sort of maybe someone a bit skeptical, and the reply by the Jordan Peterson fan is, "Oh, have you read his book? Have you seen his lectures? Have you read this? Have you read that? Oh, well, you're just misquoting him, which
so
I mean, it's maybe a little bit unfair. I mean, there's people on Alpha and stuff who I respect, and I think are good people who are really big fans of Jordan Peterson and are really defensive of him. And so that's maybe a little unfair, but I don't think it's that unfair either. I think, particularly, I'm sure we've both seen that if you come out against Jordan Peterson...
Yeah, I'm just saying we are going to cop a lot of flack because of what I said at the beginning, where I'm just like, I don't think his rating's that good. Yeah. I'm pretty sure people are just going to go like, oh,
how dare you?
Wait, Vikas, it's just like, did you actually read it? Did you read all of it? Right? And I'm just there going, and I'll just be there going like, okay, I think I did, but give me 1 second, right? Yeah. It's like I'm happy to read the chapter that you're going to suggest to read again.
Yeah.
But look, I read the book, but hey, maybe you have like my point is always going to be like this. You have received some insight from Jordan Peterson, and I'm sure he's very influential to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But like I said, my suspicion is because I'm a fairly well-adjusted male, and you are as well. I think between the two of us, we just sit there and go like, this isn't anything revelatory. This is not a new revelation.
Sure. I mean, I think some of the stuff he talks about mythology and stuff. So, like someone like James Fox Higgins, James Higgins Fox, James Fox Higgins.
You should probably mention his bloody show if you're going to mention his name.
Yeah. So he's part of the Rational Rise. He's been hugely influenced by Jordan Peterson, became a Christian as a result of it, through kind of all Jordan Peterson's discussion of the Bible. I mean, that kind of stuff seems to be more sort of just interesting. Like it's just an analytical take on mythology. I mean, it's not something that interests me much, but like it seems more interesting than the clean up your room stuff, like the self-help stuff.
Yeah. I'm surprised that didn't happen to me. There is actually a lot of religious elements in his books and his speeches. Yeah. It comes out every now and then, and it's just in large droves, and you kind of just sit there going, how is he talking to a whole room full of, like, these are internet atheists mostly.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And he's basically preaching the Bible at them. And they're kind of just, like, not immediately going like, geez, mate, stop, stop your Bible bashing in here or anything like that, which they would have done a mere 10 years ago, I swear to God.
I mean, I guess part of it is that he's not coming in as a believer. He's coming in as a sort of like an explanation of mythology. Because he himself doesn't say he's a Christian. Like, people ask him, obviously, because of his emphasis on the Bible. But
that's true. I mean, he just says he believes in the Logos.
Yeah, like, I mean, I've sort of heard of, like, excerpts of Maps of Meaning in it. He talks about, like, the Dragon of Chaos and all this kind of really... So, obviously, he's kind of got, like, a particular perspective, like, almost a mythological perspective on the world. And that kind of flows through into the rest of his writing.
That's true. And one of the things he actually spoke about quite a lot of, and I think he uses the wrong word. He goes like, he kept saying like the monster inside, and he said like, you have to be aware of the monster inside. And I was just sitting there going like, this. It sounds like a weird way to say like. So our personalities obviously comprise of a bunch of elements, right? Like there's a part of you that is malicious. There is a part of you that is that will seek revenge. There's a part, there's all these parts that make up your personality. And what he's saying is you need to be aware of these components, right? And be aware of what they can do, but keep them in control. And then I went like that. First of all, nothing I didn't know.
Yep.
Secondly, that's a lesson you should learn in your teens.
Yep.
And thirdly, I don't understand why this is such a big deal.
Sure.
There's an entire chapter about it. Yeah. It's like, we have to be monsters, and we have to be monsters, but never. Sorry, we have to learn about our monsters and then have control over them. And I'm just there going like, yeah, sure, self-control, fantastic idea. Yeah. I agree.
Well, as a Christian, I've read books about that from when I first became a Christian back in the late 90s. So like that's part of why maybe I'm not so enthused, is it's like I have literally heard this sermon. Like I've heard this sermon a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, what this really...
So that's why
what this really reminds me of is... Oh, yeah, sorry, go.
Sorry, that's why I was saying, like, I think we're two actualized males, therefore not really receiving much advantage out of this.
I mean, since we're talking about Jordan Peterson, I guess we won't get to the One Nation thing, but, like, what this really kind of reminds me of, having read Radicals for Capitalism, which is the Brian... what's his last name? Brian... I was going to say...
We can do an after...
But,
we can do an after...
Oh, I got to run after this, but... No, like what this really reminds me of is Ayn Rand and her personality cult and all the things around that. So Ayn Rand's another kind of she's very much into romance and mythology. Like not in the same way. Like she's got she's coming at it from a different perspective. But like her books are heavily romanticized and heavily kind of mythology around the individual self-actualizing. The individual seeking their own. Sort of their own good, seeking their own self-interest. And also tied into that was, for those who aren't aware of Ayn Rand, she was a writer at the Shrugged. I mean, I shouldn't have to explain who Ayn
She was
Rand is.
Also a very terrible writer outside of the non-fiction.
Sure. But I mean, one of her, the key people in her movement was Nathaniel Branden, who essentially was a self-help guru. And he's hugely influential. From what I understand, he's pretty actually influential in the psychology discipline. For a long time, the Nathaniel Branden Institute basically did self-help stuff from an objectivist perspective. So objectivism was Ayn Rand's philosophical framework, and his self-help stuff kind of grew out of that. And when you hear self-described Randians talk about the influence of Rand in their life, they talk about it like people talk about Jordan Peterson, which is she helped them realize how they could be the best person they could be.
I wonder if there's a Venn diagram of like hardcore Rand people and hardcore Jordan Peterson.
I don't think you'd probably find there's much overlap. I think if you had the same personality types, though.
Yeah.
Because essentially, how many, particularly, you think about Australia, like how many people read Atlas Shrugged? I know in America it's a book that every teenager reads, but like it probably doesn't have that much penetration here. But I suspect the kinds of people who would have been attracted to Rand back in the 60s and 70s are probably in the 50s even. They'd probably be the kind of people who'd go for Jordan Peterson now. So, I think that's interesting as a phenomenon. Like, and obviously it's inspired a gazillion think pieces on a gazillion different websites. And I'm actually okay with that.
In Australia, it might actually be an overlap.
Okay.
Like I think most of the people, I think in Australia, most of the people who are, because you said they're from the 50s, and I've been watching like people coming to, Liberty events here. They're massive Jordan Peterson fans.
Yep.
Primarily because one of the things Jordan Peterson does is, he supports free speech in all of its facets.
Yep.
Right. And that's something that's actually super popular with libertarians, particularly.
Yep.
Right. And libertarians are obviously big Rand fans as well. So I think in Australia, at least, you can see it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in the States, but in Australia.
Yeah, maybe. I think Ayn Rand does actually make a substantive contribution to the ideas of freedom. Like, I think if you, aside from even just like Atlas Shrugged and the Vanna Hen, the kind of her fictional work, if you look at her attitude towards individual freedom and like the individual being kind of the core of conceptions of liberty, I actually think she's a really top-notch thinker. Like I listened to a podcast called What's it called? I'll put a link to it anyway. Anyways, Ayn Rand on fascism. It's these essays they turn into podcasts on the libertarianism.org website. And really, like, she just had such a good way of talking about, like, how collectivism is like a corrosive force for destroying humanity. And I think Jordan Peterson, Jordan Peterson, I think, interesting, some of it. Obviously, the self-help thing's very popular. He makes like 80 grand a month on Patreon. It's like $1 million a year. And he's selling out like tours in America and Australia. So obviously the guy's rolling in cash right now, which is, again, good for him. But I don't think, at least at this stage, there's anything which I'd say, that's like a contribution to the ideas of liberty. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And obviously, he's not a libertarian philosopher. Like, he's not promoting that sort of thing, where obviously Ayn Rand was like explicitly, like, that was her thing, was like promoting these ideas of individual freedom.
The thing is, he doesn't even call himself a classical liberal. He says, like, I'm on the left, right? He said several times, like, he said several times he's on the left. And it makes sense. Like, he's basically I guess a 1960s style social democrat.
Yeah, maybe.
If you really want to get it. Yeah. So, there's, like I said at the beginning, there's nothing actually remarkable about him, but there are a lot of people that really, really, really want to, A, discredit him, and B, are going out of their way by doing really stupid things to get there.
Yeah. That's another good contrast with Rand. Like, people really hate Ayn Rand and really want to go after her. And if you ask them, have you actually read her writing? They'd probably say no. And
that's why the first thing people... Yeah, that's why the first thing whenever someone criticizes Jordan Peterson, they go like, "Have you read his stuff?"
Yeah.
And I sit there going like, actually, guys.
Actually. All right. Well, if you want a direct hate, you can message us on our Facebook page, and then you'll get an informed answer from Vikas, because he has actually read Jordan Peterson's writing. We're Facebook, iTunes, YouTube. So feel free to comment. And like and share and subscribe at those things, and we'll be back again next week.
I guess most of the comments for this one will be hate mail directed.
Yeah.
How did you not find it the most enlightening experience ever?
Why didn't you see Mount Sinai, Vikas? Come on, the tablets. They come down from God. All right, thanks everybody. See you next week.
We need to make an image of Jordan Peterson.
He's not the Messiah. He's just a naughty boy. Actually, you could almost do a recut Life of Brian and just like superimpose Jordan Peterson's head, and just like all the frothing fanatics are like, and he's just standing there at the window saying, "You're all individuals," and they're like, "We're all individuals." That's actually a good scene. I like that scene.
Ooh, we need to do that. I need to see if I can get a hold of, what is it, the DeepMind program.
Yeah. Do some deep fakes.
All right, cool.
Yep, cool. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.